What's going on, everybody? Welcome back again to the Talk Everything podcast. Yeah, we're just gonna get right into it here. Me and Nick have been wanting to do this Q&A for a while. So I know on a lot of our other videos, have been longer, and we've just kind of been talking and stuff. But I think we both just wanted to give an opportunity to anyone who had any questions, concerns, wanted to try to stump us, whatever the case is. I don't know, like not necessarily like stump us. Please don't try to stump me. I don't have all the answers.
No, please try to. We're here to talk.
But if you want to have like a conversation about anything, like that's what we're here for. Yeah, I think as I was telling Nikki before we came on live, there was a lot of uproar on Twitter, and I try to
always.
I try to respond to Nikki's post, and I just want to say this. So if you're watching this later, just please hear my heart in this. It's very hard to like read tone into a message, and I will admit that there's been times where I've tried to be. I don't try to be rude, but I try to like kind of match the energy, right? So I just want to let you guys know out there who are Nikki, aka Beat the Cult followers. I do not think I am better than you. I do not think I'm a better human than you.
Oh my gosh, Joseph.
I just want to say I just got to put this out there because
you're so awesome. Like I tell people, I'm like, Joseph is dope. Leave them alone.
People have been very upset, and I understand. Like it's like
they'll be all right. They talk shit behind. They talk shit behind pictures. They're not even willing to even come down.
Know, so it's like I learned if you're willing to talk about someone, you should be willing to talk to them. So my invitation is for anyone who wants to discuss. But yeah, like I said, I do not think I'm better than you. Despite what you may think, I actually don't think I am better morally than you as well. I don't think I'm better. I'm not. I don't even consider myself a good person. So you should find that very good. The people who don't like me, you're right. I don't think I'm a good person, but I appreciate.
But you're not a bad person. You're just a person.
And I think I am a bad person. But I appreciate the conversations. I just want you guys to know that I'm not trying to be like necessarily disrespectful. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to gotcha. A lot of the times when I'm talking on Twitter, these are genuine questions. It's genuinely what I believe. And to take a page out of someone's book, if I'm wrong and I'm a bad person and the Christian is supposed to be this nice person and you guys are better, then just be better and lovingly show me the error of my ways. Just love me. Just love me like you say Christians to do. Just love me. That's all. I love you guys, and it's been fun. So we're here, man. Me and Nikki, we're here. We'll talk about things that come up in the chat. We'll bring anyone on who wants to come on and kind of talk and stuff. But other than that, then we just chop it up sometimes. So we'll just be talking. So
yeah,
hopefully people will be coming on in. But we're here. I'll be looking at my phone every now and then to try to see if anyone.
Yeah, same. I'll be as well.
Yeah, definitely. David said the Twitter character limit is a problem on Twitter. Yeah,
that's true.
It is.
But that's also why we do this too, because you really can't have any substantive conversations on Twitter. So
no, you can't. It was funny, like, and I'm not gonna lie, I've done this before too, so I get it. And I think this is a thing on Twitter, especially when people have a disagreement and they're debating. So like, I might make a point that is true in the first portion of a tweet, and then the second portion of the tweet, it either is incorrect or not exactly right. So instead of a person saying, hey, you're right about that, it's always I'm only going to attack the part of the tweet that I know is incorrect and not address the correct part. And I think like I've done that too. Right? So it's like, but it's just interesting because it's like, hey, I believe X, Y, Z. I'll be like, prove X, Y, Z. And I will give an explanation of why I think X, Y, Z is plausible. It's not. Sure. It may not be perfect to you, but I think it's reasonable. So instead of addressing the reasonable part, it's either let me address the last word in that tweet that you said wrong or spelled wrong, or let me divert and go to a different topic. And it's just like, but this is why Twitter is not the best for these conversations. And some people will tell me,
no.
Some people will tell me, I got time. You just need to type it all out. And it's like, but imagine, and this isn't the perfect analogy, but like, imagine if we treated relationships like that, or imagine if government treated things like that. When it's time to elect officials and stuff like that, and we want to see a debate, do we say no? Just let them tweet each other. No,
Done?
we don't do that. What if you're going on a
No.
date and it's like, no, we don't. Let's just text each other. No, everyone values communication audibly. Like everyone knows this. But like you
Right.
said, we'd rather hide behind Twitter. We'd rather hide behind the keyboard and not
Hmm.
just have a conversation. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why I've told people I am willing to have conversations. I want to have more conversations, and
yeah,
I want to become more prominent in the space because there's really, honestly, no Black women doing this. And that's why I want to meet again with with Chris and talk to him because I was not really I didn't know he was a presuppositionalist until like we
yeah,
got into the conversation. And there's always, I'm not, well, I was going to make a joke about this meme when somebody like, that meme, like when someone starts doing something that maybe they shouldn't supposed to, I don't know, they shouldn't really be doing. And the meme is like, at this moment,
yeah,
she knew
yeah,
she effed up.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
as soon as he said, I'm a presuppositionalist, I was like, oh God, I have to be specifically prepared to
yeah.
debate a presuppositionalist. And I was not, I did not. I
Yeah,
would have prepared specifically, but I was not
yeah,
prepared
yeah.
to talk to a
And
presuppositionalist. But
and he's willing to talk to you again. I mean,
I
that's my
hope
man. We
so.
we talk and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, I appreciate him, and I mean, there's different ways and conversations that he has with people. So,
sure.
it's good. I mean, I think it was a good conversation. I know some people were a little um, off putted by it, but I think at the same time, like I think one thing that comes up a lot, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, is like semantics, right? And I think immediately, and I guess I better just look things up now because I'm finding this happening in my conversations with people. Um, I'm having to really look up definitions and things like that. And I think that that's
David,
not
God bless
bad,
you.
but like I think that's not terrible. But I think at the same time, like I think like if we look at a definition on the internet, it's like, hey, this is true no matter what because it's the first thing that came up on Google. And I'm not saying that it's never true, right? I'm not trying to knock definitions, but I think like there's some nuance and a little bit of like when we communicate with people. And I think
Sure.
like semantics overall, I think it can be used to like to better understand something. So when I say, for example, like if I'm saying something and then someone will say, well, no, that's just semantics. Well, I'm using it in a way to try and understand something more clear.
Yeah.
And it's not always a got you. It's like, help me understand because words, we all know words have different meanings and
Usages. Yeah, they do.
usages. And I think
Yeah.
where it's like, you're using it like this, but it can also be defined like this. So when I say this, I'm not trying to like be dishonest or trick you, or it's trying to put the pieces together, and I think like sometimes, especially on Twitter, when people respond, they're like, well, that's foolish, that's silly. And it's just like for example, I'll tell you, this not necessarily semantics, but like I asked someone the question. I said, well, I think I asked, where did all this come from? And
Mhm.
immediately it's like, idiot, dummy. And it's like, I think that I get it where it's like, if you don't believe that the world was created, that's fine. I get that. But I'm trying to think of like, if you're talking to a child, right? And again, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So when you think the type of questions that children ask, even like older kids, where
Mhm.
they're just inquisitive, they're just wondering like what you think about something. You don't respond to them like, "Oh no, that's foolish." A
Some people
child,
do,
there's some
unfortunately,
people
but
do, but it's like everything doesn't have to be like, "Oh, this is a foolish question," or things like that. Or like, I think a lot of times in the Twitter debates, people look at it like, "Oh, you're just trying to shift the burden to me," when really I'm just trying to understand what you believe about anything. It's not about shit for me anyway. It's not about shifting burden of proof to you. For me, it's like I'm just genuinely curious,
Mhm.
what you believe about this. And I think that's missed nowadays because people are so used to like, oh, you're trying to combat me, you're trying to get me. And when you
Right.
just ask the question, what do you believe about the world? How do you believe we got here? How ought we to live? And what happens after we die? Immediately, people are like, oh, you don't know. It's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. All you have to do is answer like this, for example. That's an interesting question. I actually don't believe we got here, but you know what I mean? It's like just like having a conversation. I don't think is that weird, but I think
No, it shouldn't be, but
it seems like it is for people. So
it's not even just this space, it's any type of space where
yeah,
people are typically at odds, predominantly in political debates, and religious, of course. But I think about debates about medicine, vaccinations, how America responds to international issues. People are just very hard lined in one direction or the other, and they're not willing to budge or think that they could possibly be wrong. And that um, is an issue. But we need to have these conversations. So
yeah,
I, I really want to have them. Hi, Gary.
very.
Um, and David, to your point, I wouldn't even know what a presuppositionalist is. Look up the debate between Cy Ten Bruggencate and Matt Dillahunty.
Mm-hmm.
And a very interesting point that I noticed after, because I went right to that debate after my conversation with Chris, and he followed Cy's script directly. So I was like, okay, so I understand that. But yeah, David had hit that, and you'll see the discussion. But what did Jenna say? I want to think that some, not all, approach a conversation either already. Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it carries out
Um,
aggression really carries
Paul.
out on social media, but that's why I try to get people to come up and talk in person, and why I try to encourage people to cam up is because I think it at least adds some type of personability and like personality,
Yeah,
right? Because it's like, I mean, you can still disrespect me on camera. I'm not concerned about that, but it's like it's way easier to be like, I'm going to be mean to you from my computer than when I'm not standing, but sitting in front of you, being like, hey, like I'm not trying to be mean. Like, yes, this is what I believe. I'm a Christian. You don't have to like hate me. I mean, you can if you want, but it's like we can still talk. Like I'm here. Like wherever
it's
you think I'm
silly.
wrong, I'd love to discuss it and
Well,
talk about it. And but I think like yeah, that's why like I like when you're like you want to have conversation with people. You're not like,
yeah,
hey, just write me. And with Twitter, it's like I can't write a dissertation. Like I don't have time for that.
yeah, and I don't either, honestly. Especially recently, I've been quite busy with life and love and the pursuit of happiness, or the lack of all of those. But um, yeah, but I want to actually start having these conversations more, and I'm working on trying to, get going in the atheist community, in
Yeah,
some call-in shows, and just trying to get those out. But yeah, Paul, it is a big difference here in the United States versus the UK.
yeah,
Um, but and that's part of my goal. I'm trying to get, especially the African American community, to move towards a more softer version of Christianity. And it should be considered embarrassing, but unfortunately, a lot of like the politicians here manipulate Christian beliefs to try to get people to vote, and only pander to the more extremist perspectives in order to do that. So yeah, but I tell people all the I mean, I've been on a few shows, including my own. So yeah, and I
yeah.
know David. Yeah, it
Uh,
does
there's
take
a
a lot.
uh, there's a guy on Twitter. I think he said I like all the Christmas stuff, and then he
Christmas.
said something about it being pagan and stuff. So I'm tweeting him right now to come talk
Is
about it.
he? Yeah, y'all come on here. I mean, there's a lot of people. I'm gonna say Trey Jadlow. I know who you are. I looked you up. You want to, say I'm not willing to discuss. I'm always willing to discuss. Here I am. Five Solus. You say I'm not willing to discuss. I'm calling you out directly. I am willing to discuss with you. Um, I am always willing to have conversations, and I myself want to do like some question and answer sessions as well. Right now, I'm getting into the space by interviewing people that, of course, I know who are more forgiving if like I do something technologically ignorant. Um, so, but yeah, I'm always willing to have conversations. So even if
I replied to the
maybe
room.
maybe there should be, so people can always go back and watch this. So maybe I'll do this. Um, are there any questions?
I want him to come on now and talk.
I do too. I know, but honestly,
I
the
know people
people
say
that
it's kind of hard during the middle of the day and stuff, and
that's true. And when I start working again, unfortunately, I'll probably have to schedule them later in the day as well. But that's
yeah,
okay. Um,
evenings and so. See, evenings are
where
hard though
Matt
sometimes for me.
Dillahunty? Where is Matt? Yeah, I know. Maybe weekends. I'm not sure, but where is that Matt Dillahunty? Right now, he's on Jimmy's channel, Call the Line, doing the show called The Hang Up. And yeah, oh yeah, he lives in Austin, Texas, but where he is online now, due to kind of, I guess, some of him leaving the ACA, his presence is predominantly on Jimmy's show, or I guess his show, on Call the Line, The Hang Up. So go check them out too. It's a great show. They do a great job.
Mr.
Um,
Matt, Mr. Matt Dillahunty.
I'm hoping to have his partner on this Monday. Actually, she's
Oh
a
wow.
sweetheart. So yeah, Arden's great. So I'm hoping to have her on. I just she said she could do it, and I'm just gonna confirm with her and then put up the thumbnail so let everyone know so they can chat with us. But yeah, Dillahunty is a big inspiration to me. He's made me want to start doing these things, and I
Paulie K,
listen to
what's
his
up?
content. I want to listen to his content daily. Hey, Polly.
Paulie.
So if any, yeah, but I think these are mostly atheists.
I would love
Um,
to. I would
maybe
love to hang
you and I could
out.
just
What-
um pray for that for me. Well, I mean, I
Well,
guess
I mean, I have
we
some
could
time.
just talk about it.
I mean, I have some
Yeah,
topics. Um,
yeah. Let's do it.
I have been pondering on. So,
Yeah, let's do it.
so in the, I sent this to Nikki, and I admit in front of everyone, I did not ask her permission to do this, but I did send this to her, and then I said, hey, I just wanted to be a little fun with this.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. That's cool.
um, I'm gonna say something right now that's very controversial, and it's got people, they just mad at me on Twitter, right?
Hey, Polly.
So I'm gonna ask that uh, anyone out there who disagrees with me would I don't even want to say steal from my worldview because there's going to be debate in that and semantics, but I would
Of course.
say be kind and just lovingly help me because I just don't know stuff. So I hold a position that I know is controversial, and we talked about this before, and it's interesting to me because I like this type of stuff. So in the thumbnail, the second kind of bubble for me was without the existence of God, objective morality doesn't exist. And me and Nikki talked about morality for a while and things like that.
Yeah,
But the thing that's got everyone mad on Twitter, which I think is fascinating, I said atheism is a belief. And here's how I get to that conclusion. Everyone's been waiting for this because they're just like, no. It's lack of belief. So I just want to explain how I get to that conclusion, and I just find it interesting. I just would love to just hear feedback on this, and not, I'm not trying to get you. This is just how my brain processes. So this is how my brain fizz. It's just processing. It's just my brain.
Brain fizz. That's straight from Bruggencate
Right. Like this
and
is just
Slick.
what
So
my brain is doing. So,
sure.
so okay, this is how I get to that conclusion. I don't even know if I can put
Somebody's mic is squeaking.
oh, maybe it's me. I don't know. Oh, maybe I'm gonna unplug my phone real quick. Might be me. Yeah. So this is how I come to that conclusion. I think it's interesting. So and this is where like semantics gets into it, but I think it's helpful in this case, but I could be wrong. So atheism is defined not by the internet, but it's on the internet, and some people agree to this definition. Atheism is a disbelief or lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. Um,
Okay.
I, would that be a correct definition?
How do I use it? I
Well, I
would
mean,
say
like, would that be a correct definition of atheism, with the one that I just read?
well, I correct is an interesting term because different people, different atheists use it different ways, but ultimately, the I believe the definer is just a lack of belief in gods or a lack of belief that gods exist. But a lack of belief isn't a claim of knowledge that no gods exist or do
Yep.
exist.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say if someone is an atheist and they're making the claim no gods exist, then that is a claim that needs to be demonstrated. Um, that would be yeah, that would be something that would need to be demonstrated. Simply saying I don't believe gods exist,
Yeah.
it's just a statement of I don't believe it, but it's not an affirmative statement that no gods exist.
Yeah.
The best example I use, for example, like I guess I could ask you, and this is such a cliche example, but forgive me. Do you believe unicorns exist?
I believe unicorns do not exist.
Is that a belief system?
No, I didn't say system. I just said belief.
Right, right. So the belief that the fact that you don't believe unicorns exist, would you quantify that as a belief system?
No, I would quantify it as a belief.
But
Like,
not a belief system.
no, not a belief system. So like for example, um, um, the word belief, right? The word belief, and
Mhm.
I think that um, this gets into like I'm not saying I'm not. My claim isn't that um, atheism is like Christianity in the sense of I'm putting my faith in that's not what I'm saying. So for example, like
Oh,
in
okay.
Christianity, an element of Christianity would be like, like faith alone in Christ, right? Like I have faith in Christ, but
Mhm.
also like belief, right? Like just like belief. So in terms of I believe God exists, right? Like that is a belief. And what I mean by that is the definition of a belief is an acceptance. Well, I'll just say one of these definitions, right? One
Sure.
says an acceptance that a statement is true and then or that something exists. But it's not saying that the something has to exist, right? The definition is an acceptance that a statement is true. So if I believe a statement is true, like that's belief, that is a belief,
Mhm.
or that
Mhm.
something exists. But then if you go further, it says
Hmm.
something one accepts as true or real. So
Mm.
it's not
Okay.
you're not saying you're accepting God as real and true. It's just saying something one accepts as true. And then it says semicolon, a firmly held opinion or conviction. Like that is one of the simple definitions of belief. So,
Hmm.
and I don't and to be fair, here's where the pushback came because they were like, you're trying to be dishonest. And I hope you guys hear my heart in this. I'm really not trying to be dishonest, but here's how I see it. For example, um, and this is where I don't think semantics is a bad thing because I think it helps you get an understanding of what something actually is in reality. Because we have both sides, not both sides, but we have people in different facets of life who are
Mhm.
explaining the definitions of things and explaining what they mean and talking about um, things that they think are true, right?
Mhm.
Immediately when you start to do that, you've entered into belief by definition because it says a firmly held opinion or conviction. Now I'm going to throw
Mm.
semantics at you to kind of see where I'm going with this. So, for example, like the definition of atheist, um, if I say like atheist, the definition is a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. So a person on Twitter replied to me and said to some of the stuff I was saying, they said, well, an atheist can also be described as a one-legged singing blue duck. And this is
But that's not
interesting.
how it's used,
But,
though.
but this is interesting to me though, because it's like it sure could be described as that, but it would be a false description. Why? Because it says a person. We know that ducks aren't people.
Well,
So
Donald Duck might be.
right, Donald Duck, right. So ducks aren't people. So for
They may
example,
be. I think that's kind of a.
well, here
That
let
might
me
be a.
this, and then I want to get your just take on this. So uh, the definition would be a person who believes or lacks a belief in the existence of God or gods. So I think another way of saying that, which I don't think is incorrect, is, and I think an atheist has also used this definition. Um, they'll say like, I just lack a belief in the existence of God because um, of the evidence. Like there's no
Or
evidence,
lack of it.
right?
Thus far.
The lack of evidence. But I would say too. So I would say it's not incorrect to say you believe God doesn't exist due to the lack of sufficient evidence. I don't think it's so. My question is, why is it so paramount and necessary to not use the word believe when if I were to say I believe there is no God because evidence hasn't been presented? That is
I believe there is
absolutely
no God.
because the evidence has not been presented. Now let me work backwards from that. If I were to say to someone, hey, God exists, and they said, you have to prove that. Or they
Yes.
might say, I don't believe that. They would say, I don't believe that. So that all that means is you believe God doesn't exist. And here's my big pushback though.
Some
Anytime you
people might mean that when they say it. That's not how I use it though.
okay, yeah, so some people might
Because
mean
I
that. So
I
here's
don't believe God doesn't exist, and I don't believe God does exist. I don't know if God exists.
but
So
so I would say though, and I would agree, even if you say like, hey, I think you would still have to say, um, I believe we don't know if God exists.
I don't even know if I could say I believe we don't know because a lot of people claim to know. So I would just
No,
say
well, no, I just mean from your position though, like not from like from your position, you would say we don't know.
I would say we haven't demonstrated to have knowledge, and I don't say when because we is a collective statement with a nebulous
Right,
um, capacity. Like who is we basically? So
right,
I would say based on the claims presented to me,
yep,
there has yet to be good evidence presented given for the existence of the existence of a God. And I don't believe no gods exist, and I don't believe gods do exist. I just say I don't know if gods exist. If they do, then no one's offered thus far a good explanation to confirm it.
yeah.
Um,
So as you're explaining that, I would argue that you've already entered into belief. I'm not talking about like the belief of like I'm not trying to say it's Christian. Like what I mean is that this is a firmly held opinion or conviction of yours,
it's
right?
not really firmly held. It's flexible. My
Well, I say, is it a conviction of yours?
conviction. That's such an interesting word. Semantics, right? Like, can we
Well,
just
but I think too. One question I have is like it seems to be this really like no, I don't want to say concerted, but it's like it's a very it's like a I am offended. I am angry when you say it's a belief. And I don't understand because as humans, when we're starting to explain things of what we are saying is true, like for example, if someone were to say the statement, um, uh, it hasn't been proven that God exists due to the lack of evidence, that statement is true to someone. And that would mean it's a belief to that person because they're accepting that it's true. But
I
then
believe there is not enough evidence I believe that there has not been enough evidence presented, but
and
that belief is
and and,
not
and I think
about the
that's
God, though. I'm not saying I believe no gods exist or don't exist. Or I'm
yes,
sorry, I'm not saying I believe gods do or don't exist. I'm just saying thus far the evidence presented to answer that question or even fulfill that belief statement
yep,
hasn't really been given to me.
yeah,
So I could be able to offer a statement now, and that's just me. Some people do use atheism to say that they don't believe gods exist,
yeah,
and that is a lack of belief in gods, but it's such, you know, it's so weird. Like, and I think when people do hear belief, they are assuming that one is saying that atheism is a belief system.
Exactly,
Uh,
and I'm not even getting at that. I'm not even getting at that.
yeah.
What I'm getting at is, like, as humans, we're sitting here describing what something is, but yet it's like it isn't a belief though.
Or how it's used, I would say,
Right.
because
Yeah, how
um,
it's used, what it is, but it's like, but it's not a belief though. But I'm explaining what something is, and I don't, like I said, like I don't believe. I'm not saying it is Christian with order and like there's these things that they report to. All I'm saying is if you look at just by definition what a belief is as a human, I think you can't even separate yourself from it when you begin to explain what something is. And I don't mean like this, like this mystical thing. Like when I say belief, I'm saying like as you begin to describe something like, and I don't mean to be silly with this, but it's like, do you believe there's lotion in this bottle? Yes, I
I
believe
don't
there's
know.
lotion. I believe there's lotion in this bottle. That's
Oh,
not
you
wrong.
believe? Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know if there is or not. I don't know what to believe about the bottle
But
because,
but
or
you
that
but
statement.
but
Yeah.
you would say, for example, I think you would say, for example, it wouldn't be wrong to say, I believe there's either something or nothing in the bottle.
I would say I believe it's possible there's lotion in that bottle.
Right. So I would say that is a belief of yours that you believe it's possible that there's lotion in the bottle. And I don't mean to, it's not like a I gotcha. It's just fact. It's like, but I think I don't know why it's so hard where when that word is used, it's like, now I'm angry. You've offended me. How are you offended at something that is nothing? Right?
I think what it is, and I think Jenna, you're right. I think that not all non-believers would approach so harshly, and it does hold to where that person is. I believe that if
Yeah.
people were
Yeah.
having conversations in person, that they would not be so harsh because just being able to have that human connection of looking in someone's eyes, that's an empathetic connection that has led to our perpetuation for hundreds of thousands of years. So,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's
but
good.
like,
Yeah.
I I think the propensity to react harshly to the word belief is that the person thinks you're implying that atheism is a belief system,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah.
but you're not. And I hear what you're saying. Yeah, it is my belief that there has not been enough evidence presented to support the existence of a God. I don't believe there are no gods, and I don't believe that gods exist. I
Yeah.
just I'm
And
making
I,
a comment on the evidence, not really the subject of it.
absolutely. And I would agree um even from like I can't say this 100% for sure because I'm a Christian, but I feel like it would still make sense to me if I wasn't a Christian and I were to say I believe that there is not evidence for the existence of God that is proven that God exists, or
Sure.
there's not evidence that proves he doesn't exist. I would still
Good
see,
evidence, because there is
yeah, yeah,
evidence. It's just not good evidence.
yeah, good. So if I were to say that,
Yeah.
I would still believe that that's a belief, not in a I have to adhere to anything. I just think like, oh, I believe there's different things if you know.
See, and that's the thing about these conversations. It's like nobody
Well, no,
wants to
but
get caught.
here's the thing. I said, but what I but this is
You
why I worded it.
specifically said lotion
I
too.
didn't. Yeah, I said there's either nothing or something in here. I mean,
You
that's
said there's lotion in the bottle or not. And
well,
you can also hold up saying that is lotion too. I can't see it, but
yeah, but I could also say there's either nothing. But either way, the point is it can be a belief and not be correct. So that's what I'm saying, where it's like I could believe something and it not be correct. It's a belief. So as humans,
what
when
you
we're
believe
discussing,
may not actually be represented by nature, like what evidence
sure.
supports. Because
So
I
when we're
believe there's not good evidence, but there may be good evidence.
but then that's my thing. So when humans are discussing things about stuff, I find it really hard to be like that when a human defines this is what something is, but it's not a belief. Because by definition, when you enter into describing something, you're describing belief because you are saying what you believe to be true and you
Sure.
accept it as true. So by definition, an acceptance that something is true. It doesn't mean
That's
something
true.
doesn't have to be a person. It can be a person, place, or thing. It could be
Or an
anything. It's
abstract concept as
or an
well.
abstract concept. Absolutely. So it's like, but that's where I think like people are like, well, you're trying to this, and I'm like, I'm honestly not. And I don't use system for a reason. I don't use religion for a
Right.
reason. I'm just saying,
Right. 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 Right.
and here's how I got on this though, is because as a Christian, when people press me on my beliefs, they get very definitional and they get very like, well, this. So all I'm doing in a sense is returning the favor. I'm just making sure everyone's being consistent. Because if the Christian has to go by, well, definition, cite this, cite where this verse came from, cite this, prove this, prove this, prove this. Well, why
Okay.
doesn't any other position have to go through that kind of like, and I'm not trying to say to be like mean about it, but it's like, I don't think it's that far off to say anything that someone accepts as true is a belief. I really don't think that's far off, in my opinion. But again, I'm one person out of the, what did the census say? It's a billions of people now. What did they
8
say? How
billion.
many? 8 billion.
I,
So yeah,
yeah.
uh, I'm just a
So I
speck.
think, as I think, as I iterated previously, I think it's because people think that someone is saying atheism is a belief system, but
Right.
people don't. It's not the belief that people have to support, it's the claim that a person is supporting.
Right.
Saying I don't believe that there's enough good evidence demonstrated for God, I can give examples of that, but I'm not claiming there's no good evidence. I'm not claiming that I know that there's no good evidence, because there might be, but knowledge and
Yeah.
belief are
Yep.
similar. But honestly, knowledge is kind of a subset of belief. I mean, I hear
Yeah.
Dill
Yeah.
Hunty say that all the time, and but like, yeah, I don't really have a problem with the statement that I believe there's no good evidence presented for the existence of God.
And
So
and
I
and
have no
you're and
issue with
you
that.
are probably the third atheist I talk to that is okay with saying that. And I don't think like, and for me, it's not like, Nikki, I gotcha. That's not what I'm saying. I think that's completely normal because it's
I
like,
do too. I just think
if
it's
someone,
the subject in the arena in which we're playing.
exactly, because like, if
Yeah.
someone were to say, like, if someone were to say, for example, um, I don't believe it. If they just said this, I don't believe God exists, and then someone else said, yeah, I believe God doesn't exist. It's the same thing to me.
I
But
don't
I'm just
believe God
one person.
exists. I believe God doesn't exist. I don't believe God exists. That
Like,
actually is separate. There are two separate things, because saying I don't believe something exists is not the same as saying I don't believe it doesn't exist. Or I'm sorry, I believe it doesn't. I don't believe God exists is saying, based on that claim presented, that I don't believe that claim is true. But saying I believe God doesn't exist is stating that I believe there is no God, period.
but I would
It's
say, when someone
language.
says I believe God doesn't exist, they also could say I believe God doesn't exist because of the evidence presented to me. Like, I don't think
Believe
I
God
don't think
doesn't
like
exist. I
like
don't believe God
like for
exists.
example like
I
like
don't
for
believe God
example
exists.
for example,
Belief versus
who's gonna win the NBA championship?
well, it won't be the Hawks. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, I would say I I believe the Warriors. I believe the Warriors aren't gonna win. That's not
That's a statement
strange.
of that's a statement of firm. Hold up. Your statement was I don't believe God's
If I were to
exist.
say I don't believe, like if I were to say I don't believe the Warriors are going to win, but then if I say I believe the Warriors are not going to win, or if I say I believe the Warriors are going to lose, if I say those two statements, to me they're the same. Like if I say
Oh
I
shit!
don't believe the Warriors are going
The
to win.
Warriors. Oh God. I believe God doesn't exist. My pen.
Hey, I got my
Okay.
board over here. I have to break it down.
I'm gonna just open a notepad because sometimes so I am doing a lot.
Yeah, I hear
Goodness
you. I hear you,
gracious.
David. That makes sense.
I'm doing a lot of study on like logic and philosophy, and we don't go through life, and that's the most frustrating thing. And Dill Hunty says this too. When like we're having this specific conversation because you and I are directly interested in logical fallacies and how to say things appropriately. Most people, my
Yeah.
mom, my uncle, like they're not going to have these conversations with us this way. That's not how
Right.
most
Yeah.
people think.
Yeah.
So most people use words a specific way, and I'll just yeah, I mean, I don't believe God exists. I believe God doesn't exist. So I don't believe God exists. I believe God doesn't exist. You know what's interesting is that even though to me those are saying the same thing, I am almost positive logically they're not. And it's just so ah,
Don't say logically before we have to get into
oh my gosh. You know how many books I already showed you? You know, I went and did another trip. Like the books I showed you that first time, I got more. So I got more. I was just like, it's so much. But and you know, I don't believe God exists. I don't believe God exists, or I believe God. So I think
I
the
believe
biggest
God doesn't
difference
exist.
is
Like
of an
so if you,
affirmation and a negation.
yeah, and I would say a negation is a belief as well.
If you're saying I believe this is not a way, some way, then yeah, I mean it is a belief if you're saying it that way. It is a belief statement. I'll say that, a statement of
Yeah,
belief, either an affirmative statement of belief or a negative
because belief
state or
doesn't
a
have to
negating
be
statement of belief.
because belief doesn't have to be in the affirmative. Uh
Mm-mm.
like for
Or maybe a
example,
negation.
like for example, basically too like belief. It's if belief is an acceptance that a statement is true. Like that's a definition on the internet, right? That
Or a
everyone,
rejection.
yeah, or rejection, right? So it's like, um, if I were to say I reject this because of whatever, right? I believe that is true. That it should be rejected because of
Yeah,
this.
yeah. It should be
It,
rejected. Sure. Sure, sure.
I
Okay.
just have a hard time as humans as we talk about these things in such great detail to then turn
Mm.
around and say, but it's not a belief. I notice that's why I don't say system because it's like,
I think there's an equivocation fallacy there, that we are actually probably committing. That you, when you say belief, we're assuming you mean a system, but you're actually saying, is that statement not
yeah,
a belief
okay,
you
yeah,
hold? And it is a belief that I hold, that there hasn't been enough evidence presented. Um, I would respond,
or
yeah,
Janice.
and that's a good point, Jenna. Like it's best to just remove it. Um, but
I know, but that what's it Janice said? Or someone can respond, someone can better respond. I'm not convinced in your
oh yeah, I'm
presented
just not
evidence
convinced.
for a belief in God. Yeah. So I mean I would
And
say
that's what
too,
Dillahunty says, and I like that too.
yeah,
Like,
I'm not
I'm
I'm
just not
not convinced.
convinced.
I'm not convinced in your presented evidence for the belief in God. So I don't think it's that strange to say, um, I believe God doesn't exist because of your presented evidence. I don't think that's strange.
I just think it would be dishonest too, because like I believe God doesn't exist because of your presented evidence, unless
Yeah,
you
there it is.
specify the
Okay,
God you're
Paulie.
talking about.
There's Paulie. Yeah, so he said the problem with the word belief is that it's sometimes conflated with yeah, and that's the thing though.
Exactly.
But here's the thing though, because I'm not trying to pick at like you, Nikki. I would more so pick at the ones who are being mean to me on Twitter, right? So I'm the
You
Christian
could
who's
pick
not.
at me because I'm
No,
here.
no,
I
no.
mean,
I'm
like,
not
I
picking
don't
on you
know.
like that, but I'm saying I'm the Christian who's not smart. They're the atheists who are very smart. But you know
Ain't
what the
nobody smart.
but you know that belief, if you're looking it up by definition, in terms of just the raw definition of it, and taking Christianity out of the equation, the two are not synonymous in terms of
No.
what we're talking about. So I think it's like I just think it's interesting that even on my side, how we could debate things or discuss things, but then we say, but it's not a belief. Like I didn't say system, I didn't say organization. I think when you begin to discuss these things, you just enter into it. But
Sure.
I really agree with Paulie when he says the problem is the word belief and that is sometimes
It's
conflated with faith.
conflation
Yeah, I
and
definitely.
system too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely can see that. Yeah, yeah. But
I
I
just,
think what's interesting is like outside of that, and when my response typically is to people, hey, like, man, you don't believe Christianity is true? Hey, no worries. Like, so what do you believe about life? What do you believe about, XYZ?
I
And
can say that. Yeah. I
and
would
I
say,
but I think
I
like
don't believe
that's what
Christianity is true. Yeah.
yeah, and like so then when I ask, hey, so what do you believe about the world? And maybe I throw in some topics XYZ, immediately I think they look at it as, oh, you're trying to shift some burden of proof on me, which that's not the case. All I want to
You
know,
didn't ask them what they know. You asked them what they
I said,
believe.
what do you believe about the world? Like
Sure.
what do you think about the universe and how it came to be or not. You know what I mean? Where it's like, but I think
Sure.
people usually get like, you're trying to make me. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to have you prove anything. I just want to know what you think about stuff. What do you
Just
think about
basically, why do you reject this information I'm giving you? When I was a Christian, I never thought of myself as believing that God existed.
I always said that I had faith that God did. Yeah, yeah. He
That
said
was a
that.
bad
Yeah.
You're a horrible Christian,
Folly,
Polly.
folly. I'd be
Well, my
interested in
mom would
hearing
probably say you're a
Folly's
bad
story.
Christian, regardless. But well, she wouldn't say that. She would just say you're not
You know,
worshiping the right way.
we talked about this before, just real briefly. I was supposed to have a debate with the lady. She ducked out. I never heard from her again. She just ducked. She said she was tweeting about how Christians are hypocrites, and I would agree. Um, she
I
never
say that a lot. Yeah.
and but she would never. Well, she never responded. She agreed to the discussion, and then she just went silent.
Hmm.
I would agree though, and I think the proper Christian stance is all Christians are hypocrites, every single one of them. And I
I
think
think all
the,
people, but I
yeah,
know why
me,
Christians
but
get
me
this shit
too,
a lot.
but me too. But I think that's an interesting point because it's like that's used as like to show, hey, you mess
Accountability.
up. Like, hey,
Hmm.
Christian, you mess up. But that's the whole point of um, um, what I believe the proper teaching of Christianity would be that yeah, all of us are hypocrites. That's why we need Jesus, right? So I think like it's funny because sometimes that's used as like a ooh, like look at you, you don't do everything that your Bible tells you to do. Duh, because we're not perfect. So it's like it's not a win when a Christian admits, yeah, I'm not perfect. I did
I
something
think what
wrong,
I
but
think that the issue is that it's not the fact that Christians obviously aren't perfect. It's the fact that Christians think that they could be made perfect or made anew through this sacrifice of this deity. And people are saying, you're still not perfect, even if the sacrifice, even if you believe in the sacrifice of this deity, because there's no good evidence that this deity is real or the sacrifice took place. So I think that's why I think it's the second part that most people are objecting to, because we can all admit that we're not perfect, but it's only Christians admitting they're not perfect with the caveat that they can be made perfect or forgiven for their imperfections by this deity. So I think that's where people are expressing their dissent.
yeah, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Because yeah, because I would say, yeah, because it's like, well, that's why Jesus came to. Well, I don't believe that there's good evidence that Jesus came. So at the end of the day, you're just still a hypocrite. Right, Nikki? It's not the ideal that it doesn't. I don't know as a belief at you. But yeah, I think that's where the issue is.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and I guess too, like I'd be interested in hearing more from from atheists on. Well, I guess I would know why the ultimate reason why there would be an issue with that is because like Christianity isn't true, right? Like that would be the ultimate issue with.
It's yeah,
So then I
it's
guess
not
it'd be
been
like,
demonstrated to be.
yeah, and I guess I'd be like, if Christianity was true, what would be the issue with that?
Nothing, because then you're right. Then the deity came and died. It provides absolution for you, and you're fine. But it hasn't been demonstrated to be true yet. So that's where people are like, well, you're still just like me.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right, because and people ask, well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about a specific religious belief, and then again we're talking about your version of a specific religious belief, which is why I like talking to you, is because you are always open to conversation, you're always respectful, you're cool as hell, and we can talk about these things and have open dialogue. But there are a lot of people, presuppositionalists, Calvinists, who aren't that open, and that's an issue. More people need to approach it like you, especially in our community. We need to be having these conversations, we really do.
Yeah.
um, and I'll be fostering. I'm hoping to foster those conversations more. But I think for me, it's not even really the whole belief thing. It's more like statements like people can't be moral without a God, which statements like that, or atheists don't have purpose in life because they don't believe in God. Those are the statements that would bother me more because, there are plenty of people who don't believe in God who are moral. There are plenty of people who don't believe in the same God who are moral. There are plenty
Right.
of people in the same denomination who don't believe in the same version of God who are moral.
Yeah.
And the concept of objective morality is also, um, I think, kind of, I don't even know if that's really an adequate statement. I think it's more of absolute morality. Um,
Yeah.
because, like, is this always wrong? And I would say, based on how we observe our reality, collectively, yes, there are things that can be absolutely wrong. As far as whether or not we can verify if we're in a matrix or something, since we can't test that, I would say we don't know based on that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
And I
that's
would.
how I would respond to Chris if we had that conversation again, because I was not. One thing I should have asked him is how he defines absolute.
Yeah.
But
No. Yeah. I hope we'll definitely do that again.
oh,
And
sure.
I believe the proper the Christian teaching on this is like. So yeah, I would agree with you that that anyone can be moral. Like I think per Christianity being true and what Jesus taught would be that um like, yeah, I could be moral, another person can be moral, um, but we still fall short, and that's the message of the gospel is that everyone falls short, has sinned against God, and needs a savior,
Against
right?
the
Like,
God.
not trying to proselytize to you guys in that sense, but like I'm just telling you
No,
what
you're just saying the premise or
Christianity what
the belief.
Christianity would say about Christians being more moral. Christianity wouldn't say they're more moral in the ultimate sense at all. And I
Some
think too,
Christians would say that.
yeah, some Christian would say that, and I think like from my understanding is that like um, so a person can so-called be good, right? Like I'm a good person. I'm more good or moral than a Christian, but like by what standard? And the point wouldn't be that I was more good than this person. So therefore, if God did exist, I should be able to go to heaven because I was more good than this person. The
When I go to heaven.
point of it is everyone's on the same playing field if Christianity is true, that no one is good, no one is perfect, no one is better than anyone. We all need a savior. So that would be like the proper message. I believe it's not a hierarchy of morality, like I'm better or it's definitely not you can't be moral. Like I don't think I know per Christianity being true that that's not what it teaches. So
Well,
so
that's, I mean,
I would
a
agree
lot
that
of
like
people.
I don't think like I'm more um, morally good than you.
Well,
Like
you don't, and I
I wouldn't say
appreciate
that
that.
I'm more
But
morally good than you.
a lot of people do, and it kind of trickles down into their willingness not to vote for atheists or not to vote for people who don't align with their religious beliefs. But I would say that the statement that we all fall short before God's standard definitely needs to be demonstrated, primarily starting with whether or not there's a God or not, generally speaking. And then, if there is a God and we can detect this God and understand its traits, is it specifically the Christian God? Um, what, like Joel Osteen,
Yeah,
David?
no. I just told him I said absolutely not. The Christian that says we can do what we want without consequences. I would be the type of Christian that believes we should hold fast to God's word and um, do our best to do what He tells us to, and when we fall short, because we will, um, we repent and trust Christ. We continue what the Bible talks about, the fruit of repentance. So when
But
I
you
fall
don't
short,
hold.
when I
But you don't hold to everything God tells you to do, and I'm glad that you don't.
oh yeah,
And
I don't hold to what everything God tells me to do because I can't.
well, you'd be in jail if you
What I
did.
will believe.
So
Oh, we got to get into that, but so yeah,
you'll be in prison.
but I but yeah, I fall short. I can't obey Him perfectly. That's why David, I believe the scriptures where it says we have Christ through one man's obedience, we have made righteous. So it's through Christ's obedience that I'm made righteous, and I just do my best to honor him. But I fall short every day. Would be what would be the type of Christian I am, David.
But at the same time, though, Christ's behavior, I know that in the Bible, and oddly enough, God's incarnation of Himself absolves people from sins that He's basically, or absolves them from a standard that He knew they'd never be able to reach. That theologically doesn't track for me, because
Okay.
it's like this person, like, it wouldn't work in the court of law. Like, if you kill someone, your wife can't go in and say, well, I'm taking his place for his crime. No, you have to you have to serve the time for that, or not if you're rich, but you have to serve the time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible, or at least this aspect of religion, because there's different types.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I've never understood, because I was taught this as well. I never understood how, and first of all, the Adam and Eve story is not scientifically, historically, geologically viable. It is demonstrated to be a derivative from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was a precursor to Judaism, or like Zoroastrianism. I don't even think those are the same as far as relating, but Mediterranean religion and the Epic of Gilgamesh were the precursors for Judaism, the precursors for Christianity, etc. So just that concept, but I understand the cosmogonic account of people trying to explain how the world started and the first humans and our relationship with the deities, and that's Christianity's version, or Judaism's version of it, that Christianity just kind of built onto. But just the concept of putting someone else's sins or crime onto another person who supposedly is innocent, to me, is immoral. Because, and we know that as humans, that's why we don't allow people to do that in our justice system. So that story in itself, to me, is immoral. And then also creating individuals who already know are not going to be able to live up to your standard, and still threatening to punish them anyway, is immoral.
Someone brought it up in the chat. Again, I would say not a perfect analogy, but one worth discussing. Speeding tickets work like that. When you're in the court of law, if someone pays your fine, you don't have to pay the fine because someone paid it for you.
But that's the payment of fine.
But I would say,
still be charged, like it would still be on your record that you committed the crime. It's not going to be transposed to their record. Somebody can pay your bail, but that record still goes on your.
So that's why I would say it's not a perfect analogy, because I don't think there's an adequate analogy to describe how good. Obviously, I believe Christianity is true, but I'm saying it's not a perfect analogy because if Christianity is true, there's nothing that compares to how good salvation actually is and what took place on the cross, right? So, like, a perfect analogy, I don't think is going to exist in terms of like, well, it doesn't exactly describe what Jesus did, right? Because it's still on your record. But God, if he exists and he's true, doesn't have to abide by what we may think makes sense in the court of law. Like, if he's the creator I'm just saying, if he's the creator and he died for us, and the Bible is true and Christianity is true, and he took away our sins, he can take them away, however he pleases.
You don't really see an issue with a deity being like, I would say, so you don't see a problem.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You don't see a problem with a God. You don't see a problem with this setup, basically. You have a God who creates these beings he already knows are going to be fallible, excuse me. And he puts them on this planet, and he sets the standard for them that he obviously knows that they can't reach. And then he guilt trips them and gaslights them for being unable to meet the standard. And then because of their inability to meet the standard, he then incarnates into one of them and comes down to earth to try to fix it, and has them beat the crap out of him, and then guilt trips them with that. See what I did? I got the shit beat out of me because of you. And then says, oh, well, now you're good enough, even though they've really done nothing to even fix this or to meet the standard. Like, you don't really see an issue with kind of that setup.
I totally wouldn't word it like that, but for this example, I would keep it exactly how you worded it. In my mind, again, I'm one out of billions, right? in my mind, um, again, I totally would not word it like that,
Of
but
course not, but
yeah,
that's
for sure, but
honestly
yeah,
a pretty accurate synopsis of what happened,
but
though.
it, yeah, and I would. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I would disagree that it's accurate in that sense with the wording, but if that was the case in that sense, um, I would say by what standard is that wrong? Like
By your standard, I'm asking
but
your
let's
for
say but
you.
let's say it's true. Like if it was true that God exists and He's a creator and He just is just mean,
I mean, if
whatever that
Yahweh
would mean,
exists, it
whatever mean would be in that sense. But like, yeah,
the
I would,
Christian God as I want to use as a specific example, the
yeah,
Christian God as defined in the Bible, his traits from beginning to end. That's the individual I'm talking about.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
I would hold the position that God, as the creator of the universe, could do could do whatever He wants, and I have no measurement to say, God, you can't do what you want, or you're bad. I don't think I have a measurement to say, God, you're bad, because what measurement, if He created us, would I be holding that to?
So
Is what I would say.
I believe you do have a measurement and you use it every day. I would say that the measurement would be your own morality and how you understand the world to operate in the best way possible. And I would say that by basically saying that there is a bit of special pleading here because I absolutely and we've exhibited this.
Yeah,
Genocide is wrong.
keep
I
going. I'm
think we
listening.
might. I think we may need to like I don't know like maybe if like I mean I know that they're commenting going back and forth, but it might be hard for us to stay on our conversation if we're in the comments. Joseph.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think it might be yeah. I might maybe we could like respond a little bit maybe after, but it might be
Yeah,
hard for us both to like.
yeah,
If y'all want to chat, y'all can come on screen, but it's hard for us to
yeah. We
focus on.
would love that. We would love for you guys to come up and talk. So you were
Yeah,
saying
that you have a concept of
oh, yep,
morality.
yep, yep.
And there's a bit of special pleading going on here because the Christian God, based on whatever
Yeah,
acceptance or, I mean, cultural acceptance or whatever, is being given this permission to act up and do these really horrific things simply because he's the creator.
yep,
And that, that to me is immoral because is something right because God says it's right, or is it right because or is it right because it's already right? Basically, is God the one
yeah,
who says things are right or not? But we're the ones who make that. We're the ones who live by that standard. And genocide is wrong by your standard. Rape is wrong by your standard. Child sacrifice is wrong. But these are behaviors that this deity exhibits.
yeah.
And if this
Real quick
was a
before you,
deity,
real quick before you go, because this was good. I think it was. I didn't get into this on Twitter because I wanted to actually have someone come up and discuss it.
yeah,
Um, yeah, like I guess like the thing with murder, right? So like I would hold to the position um that if God's the creator of life, He can give life. Obviously, He gave it, and He can take it. Like it's not. I wouldn't say it's murder for God in the sense of how we would say like I can't just go kill someone, right? I don't think it's wrong for God to end my life at 35 years old. I don't think that's immoral for Him to end my life. If I were to just stop breathing, I don't think it would be wrong for Him in that sense.
that's not murder, though. What I'm talking about is a God causing something directly to harm you, like flooding your home or burning
Right.
you as a result of you not being good enough. The analogy that I have is if you create something, does it give you the right to take it out?
If you create something, does it give you the right to take it out? Like something, or like what do you mean? Like if I build a computer, do I have the right to break it?
You're saying because God is a creator that God can choose to basically kill his creation at will.
I would say God can do what He wishes.
which
I would say
includes
God can do what
killing.
he wishes. So, for example, if God wanted to end my life now, he's totally justified to, I would say.
I'm not saying that if your heart stopped beating or you had a stroke, I'm not talking about like a natural occurrence taking place.
Right.
I'm not saying, I'm not, and when I'm talking about God, I'm using the word God in an anthropomorphic way,
Yeah.
as a person who is making a deliberate choice to kill someone. That's what I'm responding to. Not your heart stopping beating.
You're talking about the story in Exodus.
I'm talking about all of them. There's a lot of instances where God has specifically instructed people to
Yep.
kill on his behalf and also killed directly. So I'm not talking about the building collapses from an earthquake and you just happen to die. I'm not talking about a tornado
Right.
comes through. I don't know if they come through Iowa like that. But I'm talking about God directly saying, you know, Joseph, I'm not happy with you. I'm sending down fire to zap you. That's what I mean specifically.
Yeah.
You're
And
saying
you would say that's wrong for God to do because why?
I would say it's wrong for anybody to do. But I'm asking you if you feel that that's something that he's justified in doing because he created you.
Yeah. I'd say God can do what he wants. Yeah, I would hold
Okay.
that position that he can do what he wants.
And
But
and that's because
I
he
would say
created
because,
you.
well, not even that he's created me. He's God. He's God. He can do. I would say he can do what he wants if he's God. But I would say,
So if
sorry, go
this
ahead.
was a if this was a God from another religion,
Hmm.
would like if, for example, if I
Yeah.
told you the Krishna, I don't know if these are his traits, I doubt it, but Krishna wiped out these people in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure that's not true, but I'm just using it as an example. And you know, he killed this baby, he killed these children.
Hmm.
How would you respond to okay, so a Hindu says, well, that's okay for Krishna to do because Krishna created us.
Yeah. So I would say in part of like the message of the gospel, I always go back to the gospel because I think it's foundational and central, right? So the message of the gospel is that we've all sinned against God, right? Obviously, you know this. I'm not trying to convince you of it. What I'm saying, this is what Christians believe, that we've all sinned against God, that
Sure.
we need a savior, that we're rightly under the wrath of God, but he's been so gracious to provide Jesus Christ to die for our sins, right? So every person is already rightly under the wrath of God. Um,
Did God create, since God created all of us, is God omniscient in your definition?
yeah, yep,
Like knowing past, present, and future?
absolutely, yeah,
So when he created human beings, he knew that that we wouldn't be able to live up to his standard.
yeah, definitely,
And he knew he'd have to create a place where we would go, even knowing that we couldn't live up to this standard, where he would be willing to torture us, depending on your definition, willing to torture his creation for eternity based on a standard that he knew we couldn't live up to.
yeah. So I definitely wouldn't word it like that, but to give you just plain answers, like I know this is the emotive part of like, hey, like this is wrong for God to do what he would want to do because we're saying it's wrong, right? So like this is just plain of what I would hold to my position would be. Um, God is the creator of all, right? God God created us for his glory. He is much bigger and wiser and smarter than I am. So I would say as a Christian, I don't understand every single part of why God does or did what he did or why he does what he does. Um, but I would say as God is, I have no standard to hold to him if Christianity is true that it's wrong for God to do anything. And these are something that all Christians wrestle with in terms of like, well, how do you understand what happened here in the book of Exodus and in Judges with your God being good, right? But
Of
it only makes
course.
sense. It only makes sense if one believes the gospel, right? Like if you even believe that you've sinned against God, that you even believe these things that the Bible would teach. So yeah, like so just plainly, I would say, yeah, I have no standard to say God is wrong, and there's many cases where you know you might take that hard text in Exodus, right? Like rather just giving like And I think this would be good to do, and we don't have to do it on camera, but rather just giving like kind of the off the top answers. I would even love to just walk through those actual stories and not just
Well, there's plenty of, and we
yeah.
can
So like
definitely
I
do
would
that,
rather
but I
just
want to
walk.
do it
No,
on camera.
I would rather just walk through those actual stories. Because I think when you walk through them, yeah, I don't think it's how
Oh,
it's painted in the sense of I get how you're painting it, but I don't think it's I
oh
don't
no,
think
no, no. I'm not painting anything. It straight up says in the Bible
no,
that he
I know
lays
what you
out.
mean. I know what you mean, but I'm saying instead of me like giving the answers of, I mean, I can just plainly tell you, I don't think God does anything wrong, and that would cover
I know that.
anything that you could think of. I don't think he's wrong. I think he's just. I think he's good.
But
Uh,
just because you don't feel that doesn't mean that that behavior of that God actually isn't wrong or isn't good. Because I could feel that someone, and using, I hate going to this example, but someone could say, I don't feel what Hitler did was wrong. That
right,
doesn't mean what Hitler did wasn't wrong.
right.
Well,
Yep.
what standard do I have to, challenge Hitler when Hitler's such a powerful leader? Well,
And
you have your
I would
standard.
say without a standard that is not of ourselves, then we have nothing to measure it to, because if we were to say society has determined that what Hitler did is wrong, I don't think society determined that it was wrong.
Yes, we did.
It
We did
was
it because
wrong.
we had to.
It was wrong before society determined it, I would say. Like, for example, like slavery, right? We talked about this before.
Sure.
There was a time, and there's still a time, where society said, um, it's good, we should do this. Like, we should
And
actually do this.
it
And
was still wrong.
right,
Society can be wrong, but society can
absolutely.
improve. But
No, no,
that's the
I agree. I agree with that.
so. But the issue is that there's like that's what I'm saying. The special
We got
pleading.
about 20, Nikki, just cutting in.
Okay, but that's the special pleading that I'm
Yeah,
saying or
no, I can
using for
understand
the
that.
God, because the Christian God, there's a preference for this God, a personal preference that allows you to validate or accept even the horrific things that this God does. But that's no difference than somebody having a personal preference to validate and accept the things that Hitler has done. They're still wrong, and they would be wrong even without a God. Even if a God did not exist, which I would argue that one might not exist based on the evidence presented, we have to
Right.
work with each other. And that's why the argument there's no objective morality without God can't be quite demonstrated, because God means different things to different people. So because of these variances, we need to work with what we all agree on, or most of us agree on. And for those who don't, we have prisons.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah,
but slavery has always been wrong, even if it was verified or justified even in the Bible, with the God of the Bible giving strict instructions on how to enslave
yep,
people, how to beat
yep,
them, how to keep them as your slave, to pass them on to their children,
yep,
or your children. That's still wrong. And even now with the slave trade and sex trafficking, that is still wrong. But it's wrong because you and I know it is, and giving a special exception to this deity, while I understand it,
yep,
it doesn't help us move any direction, because this deity's not here to talk to us. This deity's not here to confirm or say maybe I was wrong, maybe I wasn't. We're just going based off of what the version is that we're reading, because there's different versions of the Bible. And that's why I just say let's scrap all of it. Let's scrap the Bible, scrap the Bhagavad Gita, scrap the Quran, and let's just work together on what we all know and can demonstrate.
yeah. What do you guys think of that in the chat? Obviously, I would disagree. I don't need to even reiterate that.
Well, I
What
mean, I would
do you guys
just say
think?
like how okay, so you know what, let's just talk about kind of the foundation. You you believe that this God exists,
Absolutely.
obviously.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know this God exists? Or let's just say, how do you know a God exists in general? Because we
Yeah.
have to establish that God exists, and then, or a God, and then
Yep.
have enough to observe its traits, apply the
Yep.
traits. So just God, and like, well, how do you define God? Let me just ask that, and then
Yeah.
I'll ask
Yeah.
you
For
how you
sure.
know.
Well, again, like we've had a little bit of this conversation before, and I
Yeah,
think
we have.
in terms
Yeah.
of getting to Christianity, I think is different than the evidence for God, right? So I would
How do
say,
you how do you know
so
that?
like for example, when the argument from Romans 1, which I don't say Romans 1 because I know people get contentious about the Bible. Um,
I know what you
to
mean.
me, to me, and again, this is not something that I want to try to word this right. This is not something that I think is um, people like. This is not something that I feel like I have such a burden that like if it's not clear that like people can believe what they want. You don't have to believe me. But
Oh
for example,
no, we're
for
just talking. That's why I asked.
when I was younger, right? Like when I was younger and I was growing up and I was looking at the things around me, looking at the world around me, to me, even before I knew much about the teachings of Christianity and Jesus, it was it was obvious to me that to me it was obvious that this world was created. It was obvious to me. It was obvious. Like,
What traits about the world to you represent that it's obvious, or what traits about the world do you notice that you know you would interpret as being obvious that there's a creator?
I would say it grew as I got older, right? So when I was younger, I would say there was little things, right? So as I'm a child growing up and I'm seeing, oh, mommy and daddy made me. Like I came from my mommy and daddy, right? You know, I'm talking like I'm a kid. I started asking the questions of, well, backtracking, where did that come from? Where did they come from? Where did they come from? Where did they come from?
Mm-hmm.
I told you this before. Like as I'm growing up, I know that everything I touch, everything that I've been around, everything that I know of, in my small world as a child, was
Mm-hmm.
created. Everything was created. No chair appeared in my house on its own. Um, no, nothing. No building made itself. As I began to get older, probably around high school and then definitely college, researching more things, running across people who didn't believe like me, looking into like, I think the first time I heard evolution, I was pretty young, but it didn't make sense to me. For example, like if evolution is true, where did like we just evolved, right? So what was the heart doing while the tissue was evolving and the blood was evolving, and where would the blood go to pump where this was happening? What happened first? What happened when the bones were evolving in the skin? And you look at DNA and you look at the human body and how, again, like people will say, oh, argument from complexity. At the same time, I don't think it's that crazy to look at the world around you and say, this looks to be created. It looks to be fine tuned. As I started to research even more, just like um, fine tuning of the earth. Like, right, there's scientists who are good. There's scientists who believe the world wasn't created, and there's scientists who believe that the world was created. There's scientists that believe the world is fine tuned, right? Like,
I would
it
be
was,
curious to hear those
and we're
scientists.
not even gonna have time to get into all of it, but like to me, it was obvious that there
Okay,
was a creator. To me, it was obvious that it was a creator.
so
Um,
what? How do you know? How do you? So you say that the chair in your room is designed and the lights in your room are designed, and I would agree with you. They
it was
are.
obvious as a child to me that it was designed before I even knew. Like, it was obvious.
So how did you notice that those things were designed versus something not being designed? What is something that's not designed to look like for you to be able to even contrast that with something that is designed?
What do you mean something that like not designed like
Because if you're asserting that something is designed, that means you have a concept of something that's not designed to compare it to. So what are you looking at that is just like what? I guess my question is, if you determine the earth is designed, what are
yeah,
you comparing it to that isn't designed?
like for example, me walking in the sand and I trip.
Find a watch.
No, I trip and
Oh,
fall.
okay, shouldn't have said that, but
Yeah, I trip and fall and I made a mark in the sand. It's not designed. But if uh, a sentence, Sally loves Joe, is written in the sand, I know that the shore could never display that message upon the sand. The water that rises to the shore could never display Sally loves Joe in the sand, but the water that rises up on the shore can display something that appears to be just a mark, right? Like, could I be wrong that someone didn't just go like this and hey, I made a little thing. Of course I could. But when you look in the sand and you see a message of Sally loves John, we know that someone wrote that down. So you look
We
at
do.
DNA, which is, I think most scientists would agree, it is tremendously detailed.
It is.
To me, it's obvious that is designed. To me, I'm not saying that like people have to believe me or anyone, but there's plenty of people just like me. Before you, this is even before you get to Jesus, right? So like, to me, it's clear that there's a creator. It's just clear. Just look at the world around you. Look at everything. It's just
See, I
clear.
look at it, but I don't see the creator, because things that are natural are different from things that are artificial, and nature is, as far as we can tell, a result of natural laws, which are not intentionally directed, as have been demonstrated. So what I'm asking is, how can you tell by comparing nature to a building that humans design, specifically that nature itself is designed based on that same standard? Because I know that it looks designed,
Yeah.
but what is there to say that there isn't a natural law that results in replication leading to these specific things that
Well,
isn't directed by a mind?
yeah. Well, I think I would lean more with the scientists who would affirm like fine tuning. Like I think when you look at the way the world is, I would say the world is fine tuned. I'd say when you look at the atmosphere that we live on, that Earth sustains this life, right? That the gravity works in such a way that how the sun is at the perfect distance from us. And I know this comes up about like the flaws in creation in the sense of, but the argument from the Christian perspective is not that the earth has no flaws, that there's nothing that needs to
Similarly.
be improved. It is that it's designed for a purpose, and it's not a, like the air quality isn't perfect, right? Like we wouldn't say it's perfect. We wouldn't say every, like for example, there's flaws in DNA. They put in the comments. It's
But
still designed. But
despite
yeah,
all
but
that,
yeah.
but we don't, despite all that, the way that
But I'm
we
not saying. So I would say, to me, like to answer your question, me observing the world around me and the things that are tangible to me, and then learning about different scientists that did not agree with evolution, um, led me to have more confidence that we live in a created world. That's even before you get to Jesus. That's just like, to me, it's obvious there's a creator,
I just
and I
I
wouldn't
don't.
have to know the necessary message of all of what DNA is supposed to do. It's clear
Well,
that it's designed, but
I would I would disagree. I don't see indications that the natural world. I don't believe that the natural world is demonstrated to be designed, because the natural world is that it's natural. It occurs based on natural laws that we can observe and then notice those patterns. And as human beings, we've evolved in this environment to be able to notice patterns in order to survive, and other animals have as well. But we quantify our world as design, quote unquote, to make it relatable to us and make it easier for us to navigate it. But just because we see that potential design doesn't mean that it's actual design. So I guess what I'm saying is, how can we determine that something is actually intentionally designed, or not just a natural pattern that has occurred through natural processes? Because I understand we don't know how to explain everything, but our inability to explain things doesn't mean that
yeah,
something is actually designed. It may just mean that we don't know how to explain it yet. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how
I,
can we
I mean, I
tell the
just,
difference?
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think as you look around nature, I, do you see order in it, or disorder?
I see both.
Yeah. So like, do you think you see more of one, or no? Do you think it's just
I think
equal?
I see chaos really, and I see that there is some order in it and some disorder. But I
Yeah.
understand that based on my limited perspective, of course, being a human being in one area of the world with my limited understanding scientifically,
Yeah.
that there that order, quote unquote, I determine or interpret order in my life so I can live and exist within my life. But I am sure that there are other areas in the universe, obviously, where we're not able to discern order or explain it. But what I'm saying is, how I define order doesn't necessarily mean there is order. I evolved, we evolved to be able to discern and put our environment into an orderly state so we could navigate it. That may not mean there is actually an order, absolutely or grandly, but
Yeah.
it means that we have been able to create order. But outside of our perception, whether there's order or disorder, I don't know. But
Mhm.
we've created order, but it doesn't for me track that just because we're able to create order, that means the universe as a whole is ordered. 1 second.
No, no, you're good. Yeah, I
Brother
can
is
hear you.
calling me. In a podcast. Heart. So yeah, so but I just question because I feel like it's an anthropomorphic
Love that
transference to
word.
nature. Yeah, I love it too. Transference to nature
Mhm.
to, and I think it's a misapplication of agency because
Right.
as human beings, the way we've become so successful is being able to determine agency, to
Mhm.
anticipate there being agency in places where there actually wasn't. So we anticipated that there was something threatening an environment when really there wasn't, but we still responded as if there were or there was.
Yeah.
So
So how do you
we
like
do this to the rest of the world
from
too.
from an evolutionary perspective, like um again, I'm not trying to shift the burden of proof to you or anyone for that sense, but I feel like it's a fair question to ask because the Christian is asked to prove every element of like Christianity or every element of why we believe something is something.
No,
And
just expound on it. I don't think they
I'm not
have to
asking you to like
prove
I'm not
it,
asking you
but
to like prove it in the sense of like, but like if evolution is true, I don't know, like have you thought about like which came first? The bones, ligaments, tendons, blood supply, or muscles to move the bones?
I'm not, I may not understand your question very
Like like
well
like like if
because
like if
we haven't
evolution
always had bones and like ligaments and tendons. There were simpler life forms initially.
so you so
And
you would so you would say that in all your research that you found in your research evidence that you thought was sufficient to support that how we look now came from like fish.
so you're asking me, and as if in my research of evolution and understanding how life has progressed, do
Yeah,
I
you would say
do
like our
I
ancestors were fish.
do I believe that Tiktaalik is the precursor to life on land today? Is what you're saying? Because Tiktaalik
Yeah,
is the animal you're referring to.
yeah. Like is that like you believe it 100% from like the
Mm-mm.
evidence? There's no
I don't
like
believe
philosophy
anything.
in there. Like it
I
doesn't
don't believe
really seem
anything
like
100%.
fish. Not
So
100%.
I don't really believe anything along those lines 100%. There are things that, okay, let me take that back because there are some things I believe to as maximal certainty as I possibly can. That is not one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
In my limited conceptualization of biology, from what I understand, is there are morphological similarities going back down the animal kingdom or through animals that show relatability. And also, there are genomic similarities as well. Tiktaalik specifically
Hmm.
is the first animal to try to live on land and to start using oxygen in the environment versus oxygen in the water. And from that animal starting to live on land in that capacity, it's started to evolve and morph into different animals as time progressed. I do understand that to be the best explanation for life as we see it on the planet, but there's obviously the possibility that that may be a misapplication.
Yeah,
It more than likely, I understand it to be close to what we understand about natural selection by evolution,
yeah.
but
So
I
you would say all those things had to like begin to form at some point, like the things that I named. So
had to
like
begin to form. Yeah, I mean, either,
so
but
like
in any
like
any
how our blood is pumping through our body and how the heart works and how things are connected and uh,
sure.
surgeons and doctors who are pretty smart are able to figure out things about the body,
Sure.
you would believe that at some point, bones, ligaments, tendons, blood supply, muscles, in order to move the bones and such, just kind of naturally developed, like how do you imagine that happening? Like with like the bone of I'm not trying to like be funny, but like let's take the bone.
No, these are questions we've been asking since we were able to think. And
I'm not trying to, again, I'm really not, I don't even know the correct definition of a straw man.
You're not. No, you're not. You're asking
like,
deliberate. No, you're fine.
Yeah, I
We're
don't know.
discussing.
It's like
Yeah,
I don't. Again, where and again, I'll just hold the perspective of, let's say, like, hey, I'm taking the Christian hat off, and I'm just a person who wants to do what I want. I believe what I want now. I can do whatever I want. Well, the burden of proof is on you to convince me evolution is true. I mean, I'm not trying to do that, but it's like, but the questions that I have are not to try to like, the burden of proof is on you, which is more like, hey, like I'm curious how your brain works. Like you understand that bones and tendons and ligaments and all these things just happen to form. Like, how do you even imagine that happening? Or what is the scientific research that you've done to affirm that, hey, yeah, like maybe whatever organism or whatever started, it grew and grew, and now like it formed eventually into us who have like these arms and bones. And at one point, for this bone to exist, it had to like not exist at one point. And now
no, there are predetermined forms. No, that's true. Yeah. No, you're right. So
it's kind of putting the other hat.
So I'm not a biologist, right? From my position of not or rejecting the concept of a creator, it does not come from the position of all knowing how all of these things work. It's from the position of understanding how we contrast things that are created with things that are not. And we do that by understanding that nature varies from what is artificial. Yeah. So that's more of my hesitation to accept the hypothesis of a creator. I am not well versed in the mechanics of evolution, but my inability, my lack of biological knowledge doesn't support the argument either way.
Yeah, so I'm not even asking to support Christianity being true. I'm just saying, like,
or any,
what do you even think
intelligent design?
What do you even think about, or intelligent design? Like, what do you even think about like evolution? Like, to what?
Sure.
Have you researched evolution, and to the degree that, like, do you think atheists? I'll just say, like, do you think most atheists have researched and studied and know all the nuances and details of evolution the same way that they would say the Christian has to know God?
Well, I would say no, but the difference between evolution is it's a specialized area of study that people go to school for years. God supposedly was imprinted on your heart at birth.
Hey, get up here, Zeke, man. You talking.
Ooh, I want to invite Aaron Raw.
Oh yeah, I like him.
I love Aaron.
Yeah, I like him.
But Aaron has been in the game for a long time, and this is why I'm going to have more of these conversations, and I think what I'm learning is that I need to do this every day, pretty much. So maybe I'll do some Twitter talk spaces or something, but that's why I've asked certain individuals if I can come on their show so I can practice doing this more and more.
Right.
But there are people, I mean, so right now I'm in the philosophical area of my study. Of course, evolution and these other topics are covered, but the difference between, so you asked about why, if atheists should be able to defend evolution to the extent that Christians defend God.
Oh, no, not should they be able to defend it, but just as much as the critique is, Christian, what's the answer to this? Christian, what's the answer to this? Christian, what's the answer to this? Like, do you think they normally hold that that same standard to the things that they affirm true, or the things that not I'm not trying to say they need to, yeah, I'm not trying to say they need to necessarily defend it by any means, but just anything that they believe, do they do that type of research? Do they do the type of fact checking and backup and all
I
that
think it
stuff?
depends on the topic that's being discussed. If a person is saying, I know, first of all, making the claim,
Yep.
I know things are created and my God did it, definitely need to provide information supporting that.
And the
Um,
same, would you say the same would be for someone who says, I know evolution is true? You say
yes,
they would need to prove that evolution is true.
not prove it, but provide
Oh,
arguments to help a person understand why they believe that and also to confirm it as well. And I would say to atheists or anyone, because it's not
arguments
just
or evidence?
Christians.
Arguments or evidence they would need to provide.
I would say both. But a lot of ways people provide evidence is by providing resources too. So I would say, and not just atheists, because there are Christians who accept evolution. So I don't necessarily think this just applies to atheists. I think, and the opposite of evolution is not God. The opposite of evolution is whatever. If evolution is not the answer, that doesn't mean God's the answer
Yes,
or
it does.
creators.
I'm playing them.
I'm like, I know you're joking. I was just. It means that we're
It is,
still
man.
looking for an answer. You're so
People
funny.
will see this and be like, I'm mad.
That's like what I bet you they would clip like that half-second clip and be like, he's crazy. Like,
It
no,
absolutely
but
does.
no. I mean, if evolution is disproven, that doesn't mean it is God. It just means we don't know. But or we're still working on answers. But what people should be willing to do is to know as much as they can about the subject and be willing to provide resources that are helpful to help not only the person they're talking to understand, but themselves, because these are evolution or the theory of evolution by natural selection. These are things we're always exploring and always learning more about. People are still doing research on these things. And if they knew they had the answer, absolutely, they would have just stopped putting research funds towards that already. But
Right.
that's not true. But my challenge is for the person who's saying for sure, they know the world was intelligently designed. We're going to need to see some things to support that. And so
Right.
far, the only arguments being presented is, well, how does this work? And how does that work? And how do we not? And in all fairness, that's how the idea of God came to be at first. We were trying to answer questions and we didn't know. So we applied agency where it may be misapplied.
How do you know that? How you know that's true?
Jenna or me?
You. How you know that's true? Were you there when the first person made up God?
I know that
How
we
you know
have
that?
I know it's true because of the research I've done. Now that is one thing I am much more confident on,
Okay.
as I
Who was the
having
first person that made it up?
the what
Who
you're
was the
asking me
first
about the
person?
very first human being to come conceive the concept, think of
Yeah, like
God.
who's the first person that like made it up? Like, hey, this is God, and you
So
said
my
it came from
understanding is
us.
that sapiens. I'm
It
sorry.
came from us like looking at agency. Like, was it just one person or was it a
Well,
group of
obviously, it's a collective, right? Like one person by themselves in the middle of the brush somewhere without feedback from others to
right?
consider is more than likely not going to be able to form a theory or concept
Yeah,
that
yeah,
others can help validate. So, early humans, um, early humans, about 50,000 years ago, we start to see archaeological evidence of rituals that are being performed in and this is represented through imagery and writings or artwork in caves, and they show natural things like trees and water and humans relating to these things. And the first forms of religion were animism, so it didn't start with like monotheistic god. Monotheistic god is a recent concept that came about after humans moved into an agricultural society and started living in bigger groups. So before that is, I'm sorry,
I'm listening to you.
but before that, humans worshipped nature as God. And then as we started to learn more about nature, we moved into shamanism and, allowing a shaman to communicate or commune with God in a specific way, and us going through the shaman, then moving into polytheism, paganism, henotheism, and then monotheism. So
Yeah,
so this is something that humans have. God changes with us because the monotheistic God that we're also hype about now used to not exist. that concept used to not exist. It used to be animism, and nature has supernatural traits. But now we're down in the monotheistic God because we know a lot, but apparently we don't know enough. So this God is supposedly supposed to answer everything for us, and he's our Ice Boom Kun in the same. I believe Hinduism or Sektivit is the best recorded potentially, but no, yeah. So that is something I do understand a little bit more. That's where my studies have me now. Right now, I'm moving into the philosophy of religion, the cosmological arguments, the teleological arguments, and the ontological arguments for God. That's what I'm studying now, and I'm also reading Stephen Hawking. So to try to understand a little bit more about the physics of it, but there's so much to learn. But I want to have these conversations more. So
yeah,
we should definitely we should definitely like follow up again. But I think Paul might have a good point about maybe getting a producer, because I don't want like the chat to if they want to talk, they should come into
I know I would love, but
the studio.
got like 8 more minutes, but I think next time we should just make people get in right away.
Yeah, because I don't want us to be split between each other in the conversation or the chat, because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
But no, there are definitely there definitely need to be some more evidence offered to support creative or intelligent design, because saying it looks intelligently designed to me is not good evidence for intelligent design. We also need to, and also saying, well, how could this happen? The probability is low. That is not good evidence either, because there's already a low probability generally for all that we're witnessing.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean it's impossible that these things could have occurred naturally. And if it's not, and we're going to assert that it's not, then we definitely need to look into that more deeply and actually demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Is man morally responsible? But there were some theists in here too.
They didn't want to come up, I guess.
All right, y'all. So I'm just going to go on record saying this.
Yeah.
Don't ever, ever, ever tell me ever again. Excuse me. Let me rein in my blackness. Don't ever tell me ever again that I'm not willing to converse about these things on camera, because I am always willing to converse about these things. So Trey and all the other people out there saying I'm not and whatever, I am absolutely willing to have these conversations. So they probably won't even watch this, but don't tell me I'm not willing to talk to you, because I am. And I'm getting better at it. And it takes a lot of work. Like when I look at, honestly, and this is so interesting how this works. But like when I look at Dillahunty, how confident he is now, that's 20 years of having these conversations. And the more I have these conversations, the more I realize I don't know. This is a verse in Ecclesiastes. It's like one of my favorite books of the Bible.
If you don't get out of here and talk about one of my favorite books in the Bible, man, I'll just play on.
It is Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, followed by Revelation, just because Revelation's a trip. But so Ecclesiastes talks about how, like, basically he's lamenting because there's so much he doesn't know. I definitely can relate to that, and there's a lot to learn. But I love that. That hit now. Ecclesiastes like hit me on like a personal level, like when you read something and it's like.
Have you read the entire Bible before?
Of course.
How many times?
I've read it once, and I'll be reading it again soon. I need to do an unboxing of my Skeptics Annotated unboxing. It's really an unbagging because it came from Amazon. But I got the Skeptics Annotated Bible and some other text to read along with it. But there's so much I want to learn and know.
Yeah.
But
a little time.
in the next, I wish I had made better choices financially so I could do this full time. But unfortunately, I have to like eventually go back to work. But I have to work. I'm still technically working. But but no, I definitely don't. I don't see evidence that things are or nature is designed.
Yeah.
But I will do some more research, of course. But I always bye, David. Thank you.
And I didn't get to get into it. I have done some research on like Bible
I
stuff.
know.
I need to send crazy. I need to
Yep.
send you uh, some
Under
stuff.
the tree.
I need to send you some stuff on why I do believe it's historically true and supported.
Like the whole Bible or just some of
Yeah,
it? Because
yeah,
there are
yeah,
some historic, I mean, there's some historical things, and
yeah. But
obviously,
and again, I think like I mean, I would be the first to say there's no evidence that I could provide anyone that they don't have the ability to refute.
well, I mean, I
So
think
like that's my
I
thing.
think that's
It's
I
not
think
gonna
that's good
necessarily
though.
knock people's socks off. I mean, it might, but also you can just say don't believe it. You know what I mean? So
Or I mean, I can follow up with the research and based on,
yeah,
and either confirm or deny or say I believe or don't, or I accept or reject. But these are conversations that do need to happen more. And the more I have these, the more I realize I need to have them.
yeah, me too. Me too. It's good. It helps me sharpen my conversation skills and yeah, yeah. I mean, I know I've been reading the chats a little bit. I'm never trying to be dishonest or rude or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, that's just how my brain works, you know. Um,
Sure.
this is
Same.
just
I
my brain.
mean,
This is my brain fizzing. But yeah,
very excited.
a lot of the questions that I ask, you know, I feel like the same type of questions get asked to me, and I don't look at it in a rude or dishonest way. It's just, you know, they're just questions. So, but
Sure, but for the
go ahead.
claim that this world is intelligently designed, that does need to be supported as a claim. And for the claim that the world is not intelligently designed, that needs to be supported as well. I'm
Yeah,
not saying the world is not intelligently designed. I'm just saying, as far as we can tell and with the evidence presented, it's not demonstrated that it's been intelligently designed, or I'm not convinced.
right.
But that
Yeah,
may
yeah.
change.
No,
Oh,
yeah, I
bye,
feel that.
Jeanette.
I feel that. Well, I'm about to get kicked out of this room. I'm at the library, so you know, I had to I can talk with y'all. But yeah, I hope we can do this again. But I think next time, Nikki, maybe we can maybe promote it earlier and me and
I'm
you can
sure.
reach out to people individually and get them on like hey, like you're gonna come on,
Yes,
you
like
know.
you're
So
coming on at this point.
we'll do
That
that.
would be great. Yeah, because that's I'm trying to, well, I'm sure everybody wants to be like the atheist experience and have like a call in,
Yeah,
but I want to do that myself. Yeah,
yeah, we'll
good
do that
Lord.
for sure.
It's wild how much research and work goes into these things. You think you can just have conversations. It's not that, you gotta study.
No, yeah,
But hey,
absolutely. No,
thanks,
I
Paul. Love you
appreciate you.
too.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I mean, even us seeing differently eye to eye. I mean, we have good conversations. I respect Nikki.
I was gonna say,
Uh,
yeah, me too. I respect you too, and
yeah,
I'm always yeah. You're coming on my Joseph's going to be on my podcast on the 3rd, so we'll be discussing these things again, and maybe we'll have like some. I think yeah, let's like
yeah,
solidify
some
like
deep,
one
yeah,
topic, and then you and I can like research that topic
yeah,
specifically, and
yeah.
because that's
Let's do
typically
that.
how like debates work. I guess it's
Yeah,
not a debate, but
no, let's
like
do
a
that for
specific
sure.
topic.
Let's do that. I'm gonna get on
Yeah,
out of here, Nikki. I'm gonna just hit you up on Twitter. I'm not even gonna be backstage after this, but I'm gonna just
that's
hit
fine.
you up and we'll talk. So I appreciate you guys and
Yeah,
keep the
thanks, Joseph.
conversations going. Keep the hard questions coming because we love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Joseph. And thank you guys. Bye. All of you
Yeah.
thanks for attending. But see you
Peace.
later. Bye.